Hi, I'm Steve Hassan, and I'm with Bob FitzPatrick and Doug Brooks. And Bob is an expert on multi-level marketing groups. He has a website, pyramidschemesalert.org. And Doug, you're an attorney who has litigated and protected people involved with multi-level marketing groups.
That's correct.
And I thought we'd take this chance, since we're all together and we've been chatting for the last few hours, to maybe get on record some of the important research that you've been doing and the important work that you've been doing to help people. And Bob, why don't you share a little bit what's up with MLMs? Why are they bad? Should people care?
Right. Well, MLM stands for multi-level marketing, also known as network marketing, sometimes referred to as direct selling. So we're speaking about a kind of industry that has spread worldwide, touches people very directly, done person to person, and comes in the form of a solicitation to earn income. And you earn income through a particular way of supposedly selling a product, but at the end of the day, this form of business really turns out to be a pyramid recruitment scheme. Pyramid recruitment scheme means that it is really based on soliciting other people to invest, and to get their money they have to solicit other people to invest. So
it's not just selling products, it's actually recruiting other people with the false belief that you're going to make a fortune.
Yeah, in fact, product is generally not sold in the sense of somebody going out door to door, person to person, selling the product. What they do go out selling is the income opportunity. And the income opportunity is the opportunity to recruit others into the income opportunity. So this becomes a form of fraud. A pyramid scheme is merely a form of fraud in the same category as a bait and switch or an embezzlement or anything else would be, but dressed up in the current environment, dressed up to look like a legitimate business, and is generally treated by the government and legally as a legitimate business. In fact, from the research that we've done over quite a few years and looked at many, many of these companies, you're talking about very dangerous financial traps.
So in other words, a person might be approached by a family member or a friend or someone from your church or someone from your temple or someone from your health club and says, hey, check out this incredible opportunity. You can make a fortune. You can retire in the next 5 years with minimal effort. And look at me, I have a Rolex and I'm driving a Lincoln. Trust me. Let me tell you more about this wonderful opportunity. And from your in-depth research, the actual numbers are that people are going to lose money. They're going to wind up alienating family members and friends because they will lose money.
Precisely. In fact, no one actually volunteers to join these schemes. They are always will be solicited. You will be asked to join. You will be asked to join by someone you know and trust, making it very difficult to evaluate it and turn it down, actually. And often the testimonies, as you mentioned, that you can make a fortune, are exaggerated or simply untrue from the person making. Even though it's someone you know, they may be exaggerating the claim. Because statistically, and we've verified this over and over again, 99% of all people who join will never make even 1 penny in profit. Some people stay in for a little while and lose a little bit. People who stay in a long time can lose literally everything.
I seem to remember Dateline did a special on Amway a number of years ago where they actually went in with footage to one of these hotel pitch scenes, and the fellow was touting that you could make $250,000 part-time. You know, a lady he was confronted, he said, did I say that?
Yes.
And it's really quite telling. I'm not sure if it's up on the internet, that particular Dateline, but it was just extraordinary insight into the world of people who are just so much like a cult, like the work that I do with people involved with the Moonies and Scientology. People are literally become a new identity where they become the company, and they believe that if they leave it, they'll be leaving their dream, and they'll be a failure, and they'll be stuck with a job. And the job is a terrible,
which
terrible
is portrayed as the worst fate
yeah,
for
it's
anybody.
like being sentenced to hell, if you were to use a
job, a
analogy.
profession, a career, any of those things will be presented as slave labor, limiting, not fulfilling your full potential.
Right.
I focus primarily on looking at it as a business model and trying to understand the true nature of the scheme. Doug focuses more on the legality of it, but of course to understand where the fraud is, or the illegality part of it, includes understanding the deceptiveness of it, and he might be able to shed a little more light.
Yeah, I would like to hear,
of
Doug,
deception.
what would you like to say?
Well,
Sure.
picture the Wild West. That's where we are with multi-level marketing. The Federal Trade Commission will occasionally go after a prominent scheme. The Securities and Exchange Commission has gone after a few big MLMs. Some state attorneys general will do it, but there's no consistent enforcement. There's no protective legislation that clearly and effectively governs multi-level marketing. Most of these companies operate freely, and they portray themselves, as Bob says, as a business opportunity. And they say, "Oh no, we're not a pyramid scheme. That's something else. It's always the other guy that's a pyramid scheme." But Bob and I and others have worked very hard to try to get the Federal Trade Commission to pass a regulation that would require at least disclosures of the actual chances of success in multi-level marketing. And the Federal Trade Commission was very close to doing this a few years ago, and then the industry orchestrated a firestorm of opposition, and that regulation is in limbo.
They lobbied it out of existence.
They did. They spent millions of dollars, and the problem, one of the problems with multi-level marketing is that people, once someone has been in it and has lost money at it, they just want to get away from it. They don't want to stay involved and try to help other people avoid this problem.
And there are other elements that keep that veil of silence over this whole business too. As Doug said, you've lost money, you want to move on with your life, so sort of cut your losses. But even if you had inclinations to whistleblow, there are some very powerful elements of these schemes that prevent that or weigh against it. One is shame. The other is fear that you may be incriminating yourself. I mean, if you discover that it's a pyramid scheme, well, you were a recruiter in it, so perhaps you're liable. The other is a kind of social cohesion here. You've recruited friends, you had a friend recruit you. Blowing the whistle means blowing the whistle on people you know. So, and if all of that doesn't work, these schemes are notorious for suing people who try to tell the truth about it. They also bind you up with contracts when you join. Many people do not realize that prevent you, in many cases, from making disparaging remarks or from suing them. You have to go through their very biased and costly and impractical method of binding arbitration, as they call it.
So they're using the law to protect themselves so they can defraud the public and enslave people into schemes that they know at the very top aren't going to produce the results that they're claiming.
Right.
So it's, in a sense, an organized criminal effort, one could say, and the government has not done their due diligence to protect the public because of lobbying pressure.
Well, I know in your work, Doug, you've taken testimony from people, depositions of people who orchestrated the launch of some of these schemes.
Yeah.
So that you saw where there was clearly knowledge that this thing is going to fleece a lot of people. We know in advance, but here's how it goes.
One of the phenomena that we see is that a company will grow and explode in size, and then it will collapse, and then the high-level participants will move on to the next one, and then the next one, and we've seen people move from scheme to scheme. Once they get good at it, they get very good at it, and there are very few people who've made a lot of money at these things. 99% do lose, and that's not just a made-up number. That is a number that I've seen in cases that I've litigated. When we finally get the data from the company, consistently we see approximately a 99% failure rate. And by that I mean, if you're in it on January 1st, most likely by December 31st that year you were out of it and you've lost what you put into it.
Mm-hmm. And just to give a little more substance even to that 99% figure, which I know sounds a little bit like hyperbole, 99%. No, it really is 99%. And in fact, it may be worse than that, 99 point something. But this has been well known for quite some years, going all the way back to 1982, when CBS 60 Minutes did a report on Amway, and the state of Wisconsin had sued Amway. And the Assistant Attorney General there had gained, through discovery, the tax returns of the top 1% of the Amway, in this case, recruiters. So actually it was the top level people. And from that, he determined that over 99% of all people in the state of Wisconsin that had ever invested in Amway lost money. And of course the people, Mike Wallace, who was the interviewer, said, are you saying 99%? Yes, 99%. That's what the data showed. We had a more modern example of this in England. 2006, the government of England prosecuted Amway and sought to have it shut down in that country for exactly the same reason. They had collected the data over a 30-year period and determined that 99% of everybody who had ever invested in that had never made a profit in the scheme. We've done our own statistical analysis. It comes out the same every time.
And in my experience working, counseling some family members who've been taken into MLMs, what was explained to me is that there's this whole shadow side of the organization that is organized around selling tapes, selling books, CDs, to train people how to have the right mindset to be successful, how to sell effectively, and in and of itself that was costing huge amounts of money, and that people were basically being indoctrinated and programmed into a set of beliefs that were faulty, that would put them at odds with their own career goals or educational goals, even their family, their relationships, their husbands or wives. And it mirrors my experience with religious cults or political cults and such. Talk to me about a little bit more about lobbying and the effects of your research in terms of the impact on politics, for example, as well as keeping any legislation at bay that could help people.
Well, the story of multi-level marketing and its epidemic spread around the country and the billions of dollars that it's siphoning from Main Street every year is a story of politics, because as Doug said, we have currently a kind of Wild West, unregulated. We have no national law. There is no HR anti-pyramid scheme law number 25.
And there should be.
There should be, but we don't. So the FTC has a broad act called Against Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices. Pyramid schemes can be classified under that. Then we have this crazy quilt of state laws that are, depending on the state, approach it in different ways. Some are weak, some are strong. So it's the only way a fraud on a scale like this could develop is if regulation is thwarted, if the regulators are muzzled and look the other way. And that is the history of this industry, developed that way. You might say the way this industry was baptized and launched came with one court ruling from a single judge, an administrative law judge, that gave an ambiguous green light to allow the basic model to develop of multi-tiered distributors all recruiting other distributors. However, the ruling was given a green light only on the condition that the basic funding of the business was from retail sales, not recruiting. And that would have perhaps been enforceable. However, we then ushered in an era of deregulation in the 1980s. Under the Reagan administration, the Federal Trade Commission literally stepped back from the marketplace. And so there was no oversight, and this thing grew and developed.
Right.
During the 90s, we had a resurgence of regulation. In the mid-90s, the FTC prosecuted more schemes of this type in a 2-year period than it had in a previous 17-year period. And then we had, again, another deregulation era beginning in 2000. Now, during that time, this industry developed quite a powerful lobbying machine. With an office on K Street, the famous K Street for lobbyists. They have an office there. And they have worked very faithfully to prevent the FTC from enforcing the law, to change, in some cases, state laws. And in the case of the FTC, this was done primarily through appointments. President Bush and the Republican Party have been the prime recipients. The Republican Party is the prime recipient, and President Bush, George W. Bush, was speaking about, elected in 2000, was by far the greatest beneficiary of money from this industry. When he was elected, he appointed an attorney whose largest client was the Amway Corporation. He appointed this attorney as the chairman of the FTC.
That's outrageous.
And at that point in 2000, regulation
bringing the fox to be in charge of the hen house. It's incredible.
And then he brought back into
what was the name of this individual?
Timothy Muris.
This is a fact.
Absolutely a fact.
This is 2010, and we're sitting here and we're talking about the President of the United States appointing someone who is an attorney for a group that has a long history of defrauding the public.
Right.
A long history to oversee other organizations that are defrauding the public.
A long history of litigation, of private litigation, of regulation, and so on. Quite a controversial business that had developed and was the target of regulation, and that very company's attorney, in effect, was made the chief cop of the Federal Trade Commission. And then he brought in as his chief economist a man named David Sheffman, and Sheffman had just finished testifying against the FTC on behalf of a multi-level marketing company that the FTC had been prosecuting in the previous administration.
Successfully prosecuted.
Successfully prosecuted and shut down. Millions of dollars were regained and redistributed to the public. And this man had served as an expert witness on behalf of the scheme. He now became the FTC's chief economist.
So this is outrageous. Bob, I read an article you recently published. It was called Main Street Bubble?
The Main Street Bubble.
Bubble, and that's available on your website for people to read. Is there a cost for this article?
Free. No.
So I would really encourage you to go to pyramidschemesalert.org. Don't go to .net or .com because you'll go to a multi-level marketing site.
Pyramid Scheme, singular.
Pyramid Scheme Alert. Thank you for correcting me. Read this article because it's very scholarly, it's very documented with specific factors. And what was amazing to me is that politicians were being paid huge sums to come to these events by the multi-level marketing groups, so they were being paid for that, as well as congressmen and other politicians to basically embed them in this scheme to defraud the American public.
They literally had a caucus in Congress, what Molly Ivins called the Pyramid Caucus. The writer Molly Ivins, the late Molly Ivins, and so they have a very powerful insider influence in Washington, not just with these appointees, but in sheer dollars. The top 5 political givers have been identified as being related to the Amway Corporation, So we're talking millions of dollars, not
Right.
not insignificant
And
money.
this is going primarily to the GOP.
Primarily to the
Not to the
GOP. That's where it was focused.
So there's a kind of a political agenda that's connected with this, possibly, ideologically.
well,
you might
think
say.
of it as a bit of a revolving circular process too. The GOP gets the money from this ill-gotten gains that these schemes receive. They give it to the GOP. The GOP then uses that money to influence regulators
Right.
to allow the scheme to continue.
Right.
The schemes grow, gain more money,
Right.
and then give even more money back into the GOP.
So one of the things that really struck me in reading your piece was your connection to the Bernie Madoff scandal, and the fact that he was perpetrating this fraud involving billions of dollars for years and years and years. Nobody tried to stop him. The one person who was investigating him, nobody wanted to talk with him. And yet you say this is even bigger than that. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Bernie Madoff, I think they eventually put the number at around 30 billion that he had taken, because the number originally was 60 billion, because that was the inflated number, because he had told people he was earning interest for them, and or returns that he actually were only on paper. And okay, so that's 30 billion, and relatively small group of people, and many of those people were wealthy.
Right.
Okay, but we're talking now about a network of companies operating over a 30-year period since that 1980 decision that sort of gave these things some carte blanche to operate. 30 years of 10 to 15 billion or more coming in the USA, and much more worldwide. So
A
this
year,
yes, and not coming from millionaires who were speculating, but from Main Street America, and people who are truly struggling, and who's not just their money, but their entire dreams, their greatest hopes, and then disrupting families and so on as a way of getting this money. So to me, this is a far more insidious influence in America. The other sad analogous picture here, as you presented, Bernie Madoff operated for about 17 years, I think, with very great credibility. He was involved with, I think he was the president of the NASDAQ at one time. Had a great reputation. These schemes have also gained this kind of credibility. The Amway yacht, for example, is a fixture at Republican national conventions. The top stars of the Republican Party speak at the Amway meetings. One of the founders of Amway was the treasurer of the National Republican Party at one time. But you could go on down the list of how they have embedded themselves into the United States Chamber of Commerce as well. So they have assembled around themselves the elements of credibility. But in the case of Bernie Madoff, as we know, it was all merely a facade, and that's the same case here. The other thing about Bernie Madoff that he used as his defense, when occasionally questions would be raised about the legitimacy of his operation, he said, "How could I be illegal? I've never been prosecuted." And these schemes today regularly use that as, if somebody raises, "Isn't this a pyramid? How could it be a pyramid scheme?"
Doug, what can we do?
I concur with that. Constantly, people will say, "Well, this," I'll hear the marketing pitch that's given, and people will say, "Well, we can't be a pyramid scheme because we've been around for so many years." And I think the Bernie Madoff example is a great example there, because he was successful. So these things don't necessarily explode right away. They can continue. The companies, they go worldwide. So if they have plowed the field in the United States, they move on to Japan, and then they move to Thailand, and they desperately want to get into China. But there's this constant renewing of this recruitment pitch, and some companies that have been moribund for years revive themselves.
Recessions are a great environment for these schemes.
Yeah, I'd say, we're clearly in a period of time in economic history where more people are more vulnerable to these schemes than ever before, because they're trying to find jobs, and they're not the jobs out there, and then they meet someone who's who's confident, who's smiling, who's saying, look at me, you too can be an independent business owner, you
Yes.
too can be doing this work, and you'll be sitting pretty, and everyone else is going to be envious of you. And a lot of people don't know that they can go on the internet, go on Google, put the name of the group, plus cult, plus scam, plus fraud. They can go to your website and read the 7 warning signs of a group that's questionable. That's a network marketing thing. But a lot of time, people get overwhelmed by I believe, the individual pressure of the family member or friend who's recruiting them, maybe a coworker, or the conformity of the group pressure. They go to one of these meetings and they don't want to stick out. They want the friendship or whatever. And we are doing this interview, and by the way, forgive us, but it was sunny, then the clouds come and it gets dark. I don't know what the camera looks like, but I just wanted to have this opportunity to sit down with 2 people who lived and breathed this fraud and helping people who've been victimized by these frauds, and try to get the message out on the internet, because our politicians are not looking after the public's best interest in this. It's really been corrupted by lobbying forces.
Steve, let me add one thing to this question about regulation and lobbying. We've just gone through a terrible episode. We're in the middle of a terrible economic episode in America, triggered by the collapse of our real estate industry, and then a Wall Street collapse,
Right.
the mortgage industry, and then an insurance company collapse requiring a massive bailout. We've nearly bankrupted our own government trying to recoup from the losses here. And what we discovered in the middle of that is that there were financial instruments involved that nobody knew anything about and are essentially unregulated. Derivatives, for example, are unregulated. Credit default swaps, most people still don't know what they are.
Right.
Subprime mortgages, again, a new instrument that just developed in recent times.
Right.
Liar loans, and so on. Multi-level marketing and pyramid and Ponzi schemes are in a very similar to that, but they're down on Main Street, but they offer a similarly unregulated and, for many people, type of scheme, type of instrument that people don't know about, aren't aware of, don't know how to deal with it, and the government is way behind the times in it.
Right.
The compensation plan based on pyramid recruiting is a kind of financial instrument, much like a subprime mortgage.
Right.
Many people don't understand those plans. And
Even
when,
as
and
they
when they
enroll
ask
in them.
questions about them, they're told, well, don't worry about it. Just keep on recruiting. Follow the plan. It doesn't really matter. You don't really need to understand this.
Yes.
I was thinking about some of the cultic things that we've been talking about today, where very often someone is when someone is first brought into these companies, they're told, write down what's your dream. How much money do you want to make? And always the answer is always, we're the answer. We can give you that level of income.
Yeah.
And if doubts are raised, the line is avoid the dream stealers. Don't listen to people that aren't part of this group.
And
I think
meanwhile,
that's-
you've been given this very complex financial proposition that nobody can understand. 8, 10 levels of people above you, 12 different bonuses involved, purchase requirements involved, and so on. It's like, how does this work?
So I'm going to put you on the spot. We've got about 5 minutes left. Give the public what you think are the critical pieces that they should use in layman's terms of how to discern whether or not it's a legitimate business opportunity or something they should be
Well,
careful.
I'll start with one or two. Doug may be able to offer
Please.
more.
Please.
The first one I would ask people to look at is if it's direct selling, as it is presented, and there's always a product, can you truly, sustainably earn a profit from selling that product person to person, by yourself, door to door? Take the recruiting business off the table. If it's a direct selling business, can you really do that? Could you do
Can
it?
you make a living at it?
Can you make a living? Or even a part-time profit sustainably? Are you a salesperson?
So if you're selling vitamins,
Yeah.
60 pills the last 2 months.
And you build up enough customers by yourself to be a
Right.
better competitor than Walmart and the local health food store and all of the online services.
Price compare.
And
Take
price
that
compare.
product and go to Walmart, go to Target, and find out, what is the competition selling? Well, we have found, Bob and I found cases where the supposed wholesale price paid by multi-level marketing distributors is actually higher than the retail price for a similar product that you can get elsewhere.
Yes.
So there's no way you can, because in order to make money in retailing, you've got to basically double your costs. So if whatever you pay, you've got to be able to sell it for a 100% markup.
But don't they slap their own label on it and say that it's a special formulation, even though it's exactly the same formulation as
Be
Walmart?
wary of lines like that,
Mhm.
because I in one of the first MLM cases that I handled, I found a company that was selling their weight loss product under their own name at a supposedly wholesale price to distributors, the exact same product formulated by a factory was being sold under a different name, direct to consumers, for the same price. You can't have a wholesale price that is the same as somebody else's retail price. It's not gonna work.
So if you do that very simple little due diligence, can I really do direct selling with this product? If the answer is maybe not, then what else would there be for you to earn a living from? And if the answer is, don't worry about that, you're going to make your living on other people joining up, you're in a pyramid recruitment scheme. You don't need to know much more than that. If you can't sell
but
that
if
product directly,
I get 100 people and I'm getting a little piece of each one, aren't I going to make money? Is the logic? And the answer on your research is?
you would only get 100 people by telling those 100 that they could each get 100. Now you need 10,000, and the 10,000 are each going to need 100. You're up to 1,000,000. The 1,000,000 are each going to need 100.
So the
Okay,
mathematics
so it can't be done.
show and prove
Right.
that it can't be done.
Can't be done also because you look on the chart and see where you are on the big picture. Usually you're at the bottom of a 100,000 person organization.
Right.
So, and you're got down
There aren't
here,
that many people on the earth.
no, who are going to buy your product
Right.
and join your downline.
Right.
So that's the trick. That's really the math part of the trick, is to convince you that you're up here when you're really down here.
And there are a few people at the top who are
Yes.
making money.
Yeah. If you were starting brand new, yes, you could make money at their expense,
Right.
but joining at the bottom, they're going to make money at your expense.
Right. And then you also mentioned that there were people who were in one of these groups who realize this, and then they go and they start their own group because they want to be at the top of the
At the
pyramid.
very top. Yes.
So instead of having 10 MLM groups, it becomes 100 MLM groups, becomes 1,000 MLM groups.
Yes.
Because there's a certain percentage saying, I want to be at the top, and it's like
Which
a
is
virus.
the nature of corruption. Corruption corrupts. It corrupts whatever it touches. This particular form of corruption of the direct selling industry has a way of multiplying and moving into other product areas and other industries and attacking other types of groups. They can go into churches, they can go into clubs, ethnic groups, and so on.
Right, right. Gentlemen, I'm very impressed with both of your efforts and your work. You've written a book, False Prophets. You wanted to say a couple of words about
First of all,
that?
Profits, Profits,
Uh-huh.
False Prophets.
Yes.
And False Prophets looks at the bigger picture of this industry and its relationship to other more classic naked types of pyramid schemes that don't even have products. It shows you how to strip away the product and all that narrative and see the essence of the pyramid beneath
And
it.
maybe you're working on another book.
Working on another book now.
How about you, Doug? What are you up to?
I am very interested in helping people like Bob and you get some regulations passed. I want to emphasize I am not soliciting for clients in this video. I have
You've done a lot of your work pro bono.
I have, but I've also made money unfortunately, based on suing these companies. And I have to say, with the way lawsuits work, the losses are never recovered. Some of that money is gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to stop these things is to not let them start.
Mm-hmm. And awareness.
The class action cases, though, have become, for many people, our last refuge, our last resort, in lieu of regulation, proper law enforcement. This is one of the few places that the citizens have been able to at least try and prevent these things.
So you're at least available as an expert witness, or as
I
a
work as an
consultant.
expert witness when these cases come up.
I don't do expert witness stuff. I'm just a counselor who's a former Mooney who sees too many people being hurt by this, and so I wanted to do this video, and hopefully you'll look at it, and you can go to freedomofmind.com, and I have some information on my site, on your site. There are a lot of good materials and links, and if they want to reach you, they can contact me or Bob.
Certainly.
You're based in Massachusetts,
I am.
I understand, and you're down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm here in Boston. And I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much. Take care.